I would like to begin my presentation on academia by referring to an old book that has been mentioned almost every week in our readings. Last round, Kathy Davison mentioned it in her article Humanities 2.0.
Are you talking about The Two Cultures and the Scientific Revolution written by Charles Percy Snow in 1959?
Yes. Though in the context of our readings, it has mostly been used to illustrate an early and influential commentary on the gap between sciences and humanities. I consider that The Two Cultures contains a summary of critiques and of assumptions on higher education and research that has been carried into the 21st century.
What do you mean?
I am going to quote some passages from The Two Cultures in the hope of showing how this discourse is embedded in our contemporary discourse on academia.
I bet I can quote the first passage that you have in mind. Literary intellectuals at one pole, at the other scientists between the two, a gulf of mutual incomprehension, hostility, and dislike, but most of all lack of understanding. They have a curious distorted image of each other.
Yes, this is probably the main claim of Snow's text, the existence of two opposed cultures that reluctantly share the habitat of academia. There are two main complaints against humanities and social sciences, and they both are created through comparison with formal and physical sciences. The first complaint is that their findings are based either on speculative or insufficiently empirical methodologies. The second complaint is, since their findings cannot be fully trusted for methodological reasons, and their hypotheses cannot be fully tested for ethical reasons, because after all, their areas of study are humanity and society. Therefore, they have little practical applications.
But how is that related to academia? Isn't academia a synonym for ivory tower?
We may have to restart by considering what academia is. Since Wikipedia is crowdsourced, it provides a concept as good as any other source, and probably more democratic. Wikipedia goes, academia is the community of students and scholars engaged in higher education and research. By extension, academia has come to mean the cultural accumulation of knowledge, its development and transmission across generations and its practitioners and transmitters. If we accept this definition, it should be safe to assume that universities, as centers of higher education and research, represent the embodiment of academia, and that knowledge includes not only scientific knowledge but also propositional knowledge.
Yes, but academia is not an autonomous system capable of sustaining itself. It is rooted in that infrastructure we call society. Therefore, academia has an economic and social responsibility in its accumulation, development, and transmission of knowledge.
What do you mean by an economic responsibility?
Public universities are supported by the general public through funds administered by the provincial government. This translates into an obligation for accountability and transparency in the internal allocation of such funds by universities. Having a higher potential for practical applications, it is only logical that sciences receive a larger share of available funds. With hindsight, we can see that, in the long run, even the most abstract discovery of pure science can be developed by applied science into something tangible. Even if the knowledge generated by humanities could be absolutely verifiable, the fact remains that, for many reasons, it is a knowledge confined into its theoretical boundaries.
I agree with accountability and transparency. However, public universities cannot be entirely organized around the same goals that private corporations are structured. Even within sciences, funding tends to be allocated more frequently to projects with immediate applicability. Not to mention that the private and the military sectors are also participating in the funding of projects in public universities. If you read the mission statement of any university, it becomes obvious that they are blurry enough to suggest a coexistence between economic and social responsibilities. But often these responsibilities are antithetical. For instance, our university mission is the advancement of learning through teaching and scholarship and service to society. How can we reconcile the social responsibility of providing the best education possible with the economic reality that universities are hiring more and more adjunct teachers and teaching assistants to save money? How can we serve society if society is becoming self-serving?
Do you have anything against adjunct teachers or grad students? Tenure does not guarantee good teaching or good research, and it can easily lead into elitism and demotivation.
Well, I have nothing against adjunct teachers, on the contrary. And I agree that the tenure system, like anything else, has a dark side. But tenure also provides the security and the autonomy to engage in meaningful and polemic endeavors. The tenure system needs to be reformed. But if the reforms are determined by the financial solvency of a purely quantitative model, then cheap adjunct labor will become the norm, and education will be reduced to a matter of business. There are non-numerical factors to consider in these reforms.
But that is a paradox. The academic promotion system may claim to consider non-numerical factors, but in reality, in a publish or perish environment, numbers determine promotion and shift academic priorities from teaching into research. Academia is not a system capable of supporting itself, but like any other system, its principal aspiration is to reproduce itself. That is the reason for the overproduction of PhD degrees with a career path orientated towards itself. Within academia, humanities train their graduate students almost exclusively with a non-existent academic work market in mind. This unregulated growth has served to generate the overabundance of cheap labor that is adjunct teaching, and to consolidate the metaphor of academia as an ivory tower.
What do you think that we should do?
I think this is a time for action, or as digital humanities promote, time for hacking, but not only code. We have to start by hacking apart our curricular design and building it back with a new orientation more adjusted to the times we live in. The authors of the last paper we read for this week, The Future of Graduate Education and Training in the Humanities, were recommending, among other things, to conceive the PhD dissertation. That is actually a good idea, but one too timid. By the time PhD students get to start seriously working in their dissertations, they have been molded into zealous followers of the narrow path of specialization through courses that replicate the PhD research experience in a smaller scale. Not to mention the comprehensive examinations. Do you believe that, in many departments, you are supposed to write the exam on a sheet of paper using a pencil and your memory? In a world with word processors, artificial intelligence, and a general overabundance of information, what does that practice have to do with the actual professional practices, work conditions, and performance expectations of higher education graduates?
I agree to a certain extent that it is a time for action. But it is also time for thinking. Because the relationship of academia with society is not that of a mere appendage. Many of the modest proposals for action are born from extreme assumptions of the times we live in. They come, on the one hand, from what could be called the Industrial Revolution model. That is, the consideration of universities as industries where efficiency is calculated as the correlation between labor, investment, and returns. On the other hand, we have the Information Revolution model. That is, the overvaluation of the transformative power of the Internet and information technology.
I hope you are not denying the importance of the Industrial Revolution, or the impact of the Information Revolution.
Not at all. I am giving greater value to both. But the Information Revolution did not eliminate neither the productive circumstances of the Industrial Revolution nor the political subservience to capital in the market. Even though we say we live in a post-industrialized world, or in the era of information, this does not mean we can disregard the political and sociological forces behind technological innovation.
Snow also said in The Two Cultures that intellectuals, in particular literary intellectuals, are natural Luddites. Ted, are you opposing technology?
No, I am not. And I think that is a sweeping statement born in the 19th century. We have the professional and moral obligation to embrace information technology, but to embrace it with reflection. A call for action cannot be translated into a banishment of thought, especially because it would be a mistake to forget that the intended uses of technology are not necessarily its most extended uses.
That sounds like catch-22. What should we do then?
I don't know, I am just an animation. But I have one last quotation from The Two Cultures. There is only one way out of this. It is, of course, by rethinking our education. I believe this is valid for the 21st century. But rethinking our education entails not only rethinking curricular design, it involves as well, rethinking the mission of academia, the management and administration of its resources, and the reconsideration of educational priorities. And this is a debate that concerns not only academia, but society in general.
I think I need a drink.
Me too. But you have to pay the first round. Do you like the music here?
I am not sure. By the way, do you know why I am wearing this short skirt? It is getting chilly.